The 1975 merger of Sikkim with India was an historic event, as it undid India's wrong done to the people of Sikkim by denying them the right to join the Union of India. It also protected India's strategic interests in the heavily defended sector along the Sino-Indian border, eliminating the rule of the Chogyal kingdom which had been vying for an independent status. How did Sikkim become a part of India? To understand that, let's have a brief look at Sikkim's history. Sikkim, founded in the 17th century by the Namagyal dynasty, was a land of protection for Buddhist practitioners in difficult times and received Tibetan land from the Tibetan government. Despite facing pressure from neighbors like the Gorkhas of Nepal and Bhutan, Sikkim became a protectorate of British India by the 19th century as the British saw Sikkim as a gateway to Tibet. In 1890, an agreement was concluded between the British and the Tibetans that defined the border between Sikkim and Tibet. Tibet also acknowledged the special relationship of British India with the Kingdom of Sikkim. A British political officer was subsequently appointed to assist the Chogyal in the administration of Sikkim's domestic and foreign affairs, in effect becoming the virtual ruler of the state. Who were the Chogyals? The Chogyal or Dharma kings were the monarchs of the former Kingdom of Sikkim, which belonged to the Namagyal dynasty. The Chogyal was the absolute monarch of Sikkim from 1642 to 1973 and the constitutional monarch from 1973 to 1975, when the monarchy was abolished and the Sikkimese people voted in a referendum to make Sikkim the 22nd state of India. Sikkim gained independence in 1947, retaining British guarantees of independence. After a failed popular vote, Nehru granted special protectorate status to Sikkim, making it a tributary. India controlled its external defense, diplomacy and communication. Jawaharlal Nehru, the Prime Minister of India, agreed to a special protectorate for Sikkim in 1947 because he believed in a Pan-Asia vision and was concerned about Chinese interests in the region. He believed that Sikkim should be treated as a special case and grow according to its own capabilities. Nehru also hoped that China would respect Tibet's autonomy if India did not absorb Sikkim. Political parties were first established in Sikkim following India's independence in 1947. The Chogyal and his allies opposed their demands, which included the eradication of feudalism, the installation of a popularly elected government, and Sikkim's admission to India. But the Chogyal could not keep his ground. In 1949, the feudal system's main pillar was destroyed when non-cultivating landowners who collected rent were outlawed. With the Indo-Sikkimese Treaty of 1950, Sikkim became a protectorate of India, and India took over responsibility for Sikkim's defense, strategic communications, and external relations. 5 general elections with adult suffrage were held between 1952 and 1974 as part of the treaty's provisions for greater public participation in governance. It was anticipated that none of the 2 signatories of the 1950 treaty would violate the Lakshman Rekha drawn by the treaty's stipulations. Sikkim had no legal justification for being given preferential treatment. Sikkim would have been amalgamated with India together with the other princely states without any opposition if Nehru had not assisted it. As a result, it was believed that Palden Thondap Namagyal, the last king of Sikkim, would be appreciative of Nehru and his daughter, Indira Gandhi, serving as prime ministers, and would refrain from acting in a way that would violate the terms of the treaty. However, Thondap had never come to terms with the fact that Sikkim was still an Indian protectorate under Clause 2 of the treaty. He craved for a status similar to that of Bhutan. To this end, he appeared to have devised a 2-pronged strategy. Initially, he asked for the removal of the word protectorate through an amendment to the clause. Thereafter, having sufficiently softened India through his old tricks, as well as domestic and international pressure, he upgraded his demand by insisting on a new treaty relationship to be signed between 2 sovereign states permitting India only to defend the Sikkim-Tibet border that was crucial to India's strategic interests in this region. To initiate his plan of action, he started looking for a suitable opportunity. China's occupation of Tibet in 1950, the Dalai Lama's flight to India in 1959, and the reverses suffered by India in the Sino-Indian War of 1962 further strengthened his resolve in the pursuit of his ultimate goal. Within a year of Indira Gandhi becoming Prime Minister, Thondup recognized that his plan needed to be put into action. First, he accelerated anti-Indian propaganda in Sikkim and promoted such activities there by using his reliable media contacts in India and elsewhere. Second, he began to portray Sikkim as having its own identity. Last but not least, he began utilizing the pro-Sikkim lobbying in India that he had meticulously developed over the years to support his cause. This includes some retired and active government of Indian civil servants, senior army officers, both locally stationed and visiting, senior civil servants serving on long-term deputation in Sikkim, and political figures whom he had wined and dined over the years. Additionally, Thondup assembled more than 100 Sikkim intellectuals and established a study forum to provide him with advice on matters pertaining to Sikkim's national interests. The forum made 3 recommendations. Sikkim could issue its own stamps to generate foreign cash, like Bhutan was doing, join the Colombo Plan, and decline Indian aid if it is not given with grace. Thondup addressed a news conference at the palace in May 1967 and informed the reporters that while his country desired political independence, he was prepared to wait for the government's convenience. He further clarified his demand on 6 June, stating that he wanted India to handle only the defense of Sikkim and leave the rest to him. Additionally, he questioned the rationale behind maintaining an Indian-appointed Diwan, later renamed to its Tibetan counterpart, Sidlon. He believed that a qualified Sikkimese might be better suited for this position. On 15 June, a few days later, 3 Sikkim Executive Council members made the historic claim that each nation has a right to reconsider their treaty obligations. The Chogyal thus believed that Delhi was too weak to resist his demands. Hence, the Chogyal continued to receive royal treatment from the Indian government. In the spring of 1971, the Chogyal expressed a wish to go on a pilgrimage to important places of Buddhist interest in India. The Indian Railways provided 2 luxury coaches for the trip. The Chogyal was extended a warm welcome wherever he went. Governors of the states he visited hosted lunches and dinners in his honor. Indira Gandhi received him with all courtesies. It was a high watermark of Sikkim's relationship with India, despite the pinpricks the Chogyal had started giving to India on a number of matters of key importance. Sikkimese society at the time was made up of Lepchas, Bhutias and Nepalis. There was a clear religious divide amongst the Sikkimese population. While the Bhutias were followers of Mahayana Buddhism, the Lepchas were originally animists but gradually started following Buddhism. The Nepalis were largely Hindus. These religious distinctions were sharp even in the small microcosm of Sikkim and inevitably impacted the political outlook. This divide was deliberately created and sustained by the Darbar to maintain the Chogyal's hold over the Bhutia-Lepcha segment, to neutralize the impact of the ever-growing demands for political and economic reforms that emanated from the numerically stronger but politically and economically deprived Nepalese segment. Indira Gandhi finally decided to go for a course correction in India's policy of appeasement towards the Chogyal. Having tasted success through the dismemberment of East Pakistan in 1971 and the resultant emergence of Bangladesh, and fully confident of the capabilities of the buoyant RAW under the leadership of R.N. Kao, she finally told Kao to do something about Sikkim. In 1973, the Government of India launched an operation to lend support to the anti-Chogyal and pro-democracy political parties and their leaders in Sikkim, especially Kazi Lhendup Dorji, to fulfill their long-cherished desire for political administrative and economic reforms. This operation was to culminate in the merger of Sikkim with India. The last objective was to be achieved in stages and through constitutional means, and as far as possible, through public support for the elected leaders. He also mentioned that other than Qazi, no leader had been taken into confidence about the ultimate goal. Qazi Lhendup Dorji played a pivotal role in Sikkim's merger with India. In 1962, Dorji helped to found the Sikkim National Congress political party. The unity-themed political platform of the party helped the Sikkim National Congress to win 8 of the 18 seats up for grabs in Sikkim's third general election. Lhendup, who belonged to the Qazi family, had a historic enmity with Sikkim's ruling Chogyals. He said he wanted to pressurize the king through public protests but lamented that the king never came forward for reconciliation. Under pressure from Delhi, the Sikkimese king was forced to hold tripartite talks with SNC and India. The talks not only curtailed royal powers, it also turned Sikkim into an Indian protectorate. In the elections held in 1974, Lhendup's SNC got overwhelming majority in the parliament. The government and the king saw each other as enemies. Ultimately, the cabinet meeting on 27 March 1975 decided to abolish monarchy. The Sikkimese parliament endorsed it and decided to hold a referendum on the future of monarchy. 4 days later, the outcome of the poll in 57 stations across the country was abolition of the monarchy. Immediately after the referendum, Qazi Lhendup moved a motion in the parliament proposing that Sikkim be annexed to India. The 32-member parliament, which had 31 members from Lhendup's SNC, passed the motion without a blink. The then Indian envoy to Sikkim, known as political officer, B.S. Das wrote in his book The Sikkim Saga, Sikkim's merger was necessary for Indian national interest. And we worked to that end. Maybe if the Chogyal had been smarter and played his cards better, it wouldn't have turned out the way it did. Once the referendum was passed, Qazi was not sure how the Chogyal would react. Army battalions were deployed in the operation on 9th April. Around noon, the CRPF took position on the ridge towards the political office, and army troops started moving towards the main entrance gate, Tsuklakang, of the palace, which was manned by 2 Sikkim Guards sentries. Seeing the Indian army move towards the gate, one of the 2 sentries, Basant Kumar Chetri, challenged them and asked them to stop. He had just pointed his rifle towards them when he was shot dead by the approaching Indian troops. The other sentry was also hit in the right arm, which had to be amputated later. The Chogyal, in panic, called police officer Gurbachan Singh to inquire as to what was happening, but the phone was passed on to General Kuller, who was sitting with the PO. General Kuller asked the Chogyal to order the Sikkim Guards to lay down their arms. The 5,000-strong Indian force didn't take more than 30 minutes to subdue the palace guards, who numbered only 243. By 12:45 p.m. it was all over. Sikkim ceased to exist as an independent kingdom. The Sikkim Congress issued a statement in Gangtok saying that it has now become evident that the people of Sikkim can realize their full rights only if Sikkim becomes a unit of the Union of India. The party also called for the abolition of the oppressive and undemocratic institution of the Chogyal for all times. On 10th April, on Qazi's request, an emergency session of the assembly was called. A total of 29 Sikkim Congress legislators attended it. 2 resolutions were introduced. The first resolution was about the abolition of the institution of the Chogyal and the consequent merger of Sikkim with India. The second was about the holding of a referendum on the first resolution. The resolutions were adopted unanimously by all 29 party members present. Modern Sikkim is a multi-ethnic, multilingual Indian state with official languages including English, Nepali, Bhutia, and Lepcha. English is taught in schools and used in government documents. The predominant religion is Hinduism, with a significant Vajrayana Buddhist minority. Sikkim's economy is largely dependent on agriculture and tourism. The state has one of the fastest growing economies in India.